Well, here we are on Take Back America. I'm William Wagner, your host and producer. We're here live in the studio here in Santa Maria. I'm taking my hat off for you people that tuned up because you're the only people that are going to save this country. It certainly isn't going to happen with the criminals we have in office today, as most of you know if you've been watching and paying any attention. Wasn't that funny the other night? Trump and the guys bickering and nobody talking about any substantial issues, just bickering. Oh, he got sued. Oh, he didn't. Who cares? These guys are supposed to be presidential timber. It was a joke. It was just, a laughing joke. You're blessed if you didn't waste your time watching the so-called debate. Tonight we have something I think would be far more interesting so that we, the people, will remember we were massively lied to, and they continue to lie to us every September 11th. They never talk about the third building, World Trade Center, which no plane crashed into, and it just collapsed because it got scared. It saw the other twin towers fall, and it stood there and said, oh my gosh, I think I'll fall down too. No, steel and concrete buildings don't do that. That's why they don't mention 7 World Trade Center, because 6 hours after the twin towers were dust in the ground, down came a building owned by that guy who said, oh. So that should give you time to have some on-second thoughts here on Take Back America. And with me tonight, not in the studio, but live from the state jurisdiction, I think they call Ohio. Is that right?
It'd be the territory, Ohio.
Territorial. Thank you for correcting me. With us here tonight is Lotus Justice, who has some really interesting information I think will rock your clock if you're paying any attention at all. Lotus, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for asking me to be on. I'll start by saying I reserve all rights. That's what a good lawful citizen would do in circumstances such as this.
Okay.
But I definitely appreciate you having me on. I think it's something, this knowledge is definitely something that needs to be shared with everybody.
Well, you just had free housing at the magnificent territory of Ohio, all paid for, bed and breakfast for what, a year?
A year, exactly a year. Exactly a year, and then if you add some jail time before that, I think a year and 2 weeks, yeah.
And
Ohio
that,
Reformatory for Women.
And that was because you tried to educate a judge in the territory of Ohio about something.
I tried to educate several judges. What had started as an exercise and asking the forms of justice here, which is what I'll loosely call them, about asking about their grants of law, because all courts of law in the United States have a grant of law that are provided to them by the Constitution. They're court specific. They look much like what would be a diploma that you would receive from a university that says this court is lawful, has been assigned this grant of law by the legislature. Things such as that. We did that by utilizing something called a demurrer. They kind of had me on their radar for some activities that I had done in the exercise of constitutional rights prior to that. So,
are you suggesting that the judges don't like us, the bar-carded group don't like us exercising our constitutional liberty?
Yeah, I would have to say members of the bar don't like being reminded of what the law is because you can be a judge and not be an attorney. You could exercise and invoke law without being an attorney. So in this case, yeah, they were esquires, is how I would categorize them. Esquire being a title of nobility under Blackstone's hierarchy of nobility. So these were esquires. I'm into political activism. I started. I'm a hippie, kid. My parents were hippies and were activists. I started off at a very young age at sit-ins and going to things like that, seeing John Denver and Joan Baez anti-war things. I grew up in activism, so I actually was politically active for many years. I actually ran 7 wards for the Kerry campaign whenever I believed in the system. Turned 7 Republican wards Democratic, or Libertarian in a way, liberal, progressive Democrat. And so I did all that, and I found that there was a great deal of discontent for me because it seemed that they were more concerned about maintaining the system both sides were more concerned about maintaining the system than really fixing what I saw was wrong with America at the time. And so I went more to grassroots organizations. And I actually helped the local Occupy movement, the students there with their systems, and got a real keen insight into how things work. And I got connected with some individuals that run a local group here called Our Fourth Branch, which has been around for about 20, 30 years. It was originally started, I believe, by about 8 older men who were retired, and they have a plethora of information that is in the public record that they bring forth, and started attending classes that a man who teaches, Mr. Elwood teaches, William Elwood.
Men in open court as heretofore used, and Section 12, that no free man ought to be taken, imprisoned, or deprived of his freehold, liberties, or privileges, or outlawed or exiled in any manner, destroyed or deprived of life, liberty, or property, but by the law of the land, meaning the common law. A citizen of this country, before he can be subjected to the punishment of treason or to the disabilities consequent upon it, must be convicted of a jury of his neighborhood, upon the previous accusation of the grand jury of his neighbors.
He kind of pointed me in a direction of education, and I already had a great deal of education in this, being that I'm from a common law state. I landed in the territory of Missouri when my mother gave me up to the world. And he pointed me in a direction. I started reading and doing research. So he started my inquisition into what's really going on and pointed me in a great deal of directions. And from that, I just, being the student that I am of history, I spent a great deal of time doing a great deal of research on some very key topics that he pointed out, one of which is the existence of a 13th Amendment that has been lawfully ratified but has been taken off the books, was taken off the books by a series of movements, a period of about 40 or 50 years, and then was officially wiped off the books during the Civil War. But it's a lawfully ratified amendment, and it's a pretty poignant one.
So even though it wasn't published, it has never been amended out of existence. It's never been repealed by amendment, which it would have to be.
No.
So it's still the law.
Published.
So it's still the law.
It was published in a variety of, it was published actually in a variety of resources. It was published in a lot of state statutes where they would reissue the state constitutions. It was also used in a primer, a student primer that was published in, I believe, in the 1820s and was used up till the 1840s. It was published in a great deal of publications, but they disappeared it during the Civil War. Actually, just before the Civil War. And they did it with a series of just like the people forgetting, that it was there. There was, what they did is they polluted the lawful amendment process. And that's what I researched, because there was a belief that the 13th Amendment was lawfully amended, but no one had really done the thorough research to verify the sources of this claim. And so I set about, just reading things to find out if I could find out if it had been lawfully ratified. And pursuant to the state papers, it was.
And what year did you start researching?
I started researching this probably about 2010, and I also acquired the actual state publications. I actually bought the books. I researched them and found them for sale, and when I could, and I bought them. So I actually have multiple copies of the actual state papers, of the actual physical books that prove the state papers are there, that they exist, and have physical copies to prove that this was lawfully ratified. And I published it, meaning I sent it to a variety of individuals and put it upon the record in a case that I was charged with in 2012.
And Judge, what's his name? Didn't like that.
Well, there was a variety of judges. Andrea Peoples was one of the initial judges. I think Judge Jim O'Grady's been given it. The District Court of the United States for the District of Columbia has been provided this. The Bankruptcy Court of the District of Columbia has been provided the writ of conspiracy. The United States District Court for the Southern District of Ohio has been provided the writ of conspiracy. Every municipal court in Franklin County has it. The Common Pleas Court here has it. And also I've sent it to the Pope, the United Nations, and all the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the Secretary of State, and I think the Sheriff's Union.
I would say that's pretty well published then.
Yeah, it's published. Whenever I put it on as an exhibit in court papers, they leave it out. Put it that way.
You put them on notice.
That's how I know when I write something something really good
And
is
did
they
Judge
don't publish it. They leave it out, right? It's not in the public record.
did Judge
It's
Peoples and Judge O'Malley, did they appreciate this? You
Judge Brady. No, and then no, they
Brady,
don't.
I'm
I don't
sorry.
think they. I don't think they believe it. I think that it's that term, what cognitive disconnect, that they just can't believe. They can't believe that
That
there would
something
be
could have
such a
been
basic lie. Right.
disappeared for 100 years.
Right. Yeah. I think that they just think it's hooey, but it actually there's a lot of attorneys who have seen it and they're quite surprised that it exists. One individual that I brought, he was a really kind of a snazzy attorney. He wasn't even involved in my case, but he was a pretty prominent attorney that was in the courtroom one time, and he saw it's about an inch and a half thick. I mean, it's a fairly impressive document, because it has all of the documents that you need to prove it, certified copies within it. He saw it, and he would just happen to be there in a case, and he's thumbing through it, and he's like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, she's like got this information, and he's an attorney wondering, how did this, because they've been lied to too. I mean, some attorneys haven't been lied to. I think there's some people that may know, but I think the preponderance of people believe the same truth that we do, or have been believing the same truth that truth being subjective. But the fact of the matter is it is a lawfully ratified amendment to the Constitution. And within the research that I found, you see some intentional actions that look as though people were lying to the people intentionally to try to pollute the truth.
What's your email again? I'm sorry, what's your email again?
lotusjustice@gmx.com.
At gmx.com.
And I have a Dropbox, and I'll probably put some more stuff up. Like I said, there are some district court cases stuff, but they always pull that little section out because it's just a little too damning. And I understand.
But isn't that fraud? Isn't that fraud by the clerk and the judge if they omit something that you put on the
record? If they were
record?
really courts of law, it would be fraud. But they're private jurisdiction hearings. They're not courts of law.
You mean we don't have the Article 3 courts the Constitution speaks of?
No, we don't know, because there's only 4 jurisdictions in Article 3: the law, equity, admiralty, and maritime. Well, admiralty and maritime are on the water, okay, and to the watermark of what is it? So many feet inland. My friend Bill would know. So many feet inland, and then the equity and law, they are on the land. Equity, go across, it kind of converges because it has to do with equitable contracts. So you can have disproportionate contracts probably on the water, but the captain of the boat is the captain of the boat. If he wants to ignore the law, he can. So, the civil jurisdiction which we operate in is extra constitutional. It was created after the Civil War, thus the Civil War, where they created a civil jurisdiction and why you have civil rights. But the civil jurisdiction is not a constitutional jurisdiction. Those are not Article 3 courts. They are a special jurisdiction that the attorneys, the esquires, have created for the preservation of commerce. And it is prize law, prize admiralty. It's vice admiralty is actually what the jurisdiction is, and they're exercising vice admiralty, which is a water-based jurisdiction upon the land. They've brought water commerce upon the land.
Okay, let's go quickly through. You brought up the original 13th Amendment. Judge Peoples didn't like it. Judge O'Grady didn't like it. Which one?
Nobody liked it.
People or Grady said, I'm putting you in jail for talking about this. Which one?
Well, what happened is I go in, basically I'm being an activist, and we're going about challenging the jurisdictions of the local courts because we know they have no grants of law. We know that they're not Article 3 courts. We know that by the way they function. And I go in and I actually get stopped while traveling. And I did not have the authority, state licensure, did not maintain a driver's license because I don't need a license to travel. And my carriage did not have a license because I was not operating commerce. Neither of those things do you have to have a license for. You don't have to have licensures from your state, corporate state, to do those things. Now, mind you, I was exercising extreme constitutional rights, but I was just to the point where I'd been targeted for a variety of things that I just wasn't willing to surrender my rights.
You weren't going to give them a single inch.
No, I wasn't going to. And they already knew who I was. They already knew.
May surprise you. About 8 years ago, I had an ex-Bakersfield police officer named Brad Pugh, who came on this show where I'm sitting right here now and said exactly what you said, and he doesn't have a license plate and he doesn't use a driver's license. But what he does do is he carries $1 million bond.
Right.
So if he has an accident with anyone, he says, "Here's my $1 million bond. Leave me alone."
We all have $1 million plus bond. It's called your Susquehanna Trust. You have that. You already have that. You don't need to write a separated one. I mean, we're all worth.
Yeah, he bought an extra one. And what's interesting, other police have pulled him over,
Right.
and he says, "Okay, you want me to sign this ticket?" And he writes something on the ticket and attaches his name, and he says, you'd have to go look it up on YouTube under Brad Pugh on William Wagner YouTube channel, but he says something like, after about 3 weeks, it's dismissed.
Well, that's what they're doing. I mean, they're actually exercising the bankruptcy. In order to understand what that is, so I'm traveling, not in commerce. They kind of stop me in a Commonwealth area. They arrest me for a non-arrestable offense. It's not an arrestable offense to not have a license. It hadn't even been expired, I think more than 3 months or something like that. I was arrested for a non-arrestable offense, basically because of who I was. And they proceeded to rough me up when they arrested me, and then took me to jail. And I asked for the duty judge, all the things you're supposed to do when you know the law, which they were all denied.
Did you ask for a probable cause hearing immediately?
Oh yeah, well, I filed a habeas. I mean, my habeas was ignored, So I go to so I get out on or people pay a bond for me, and I go to the hearing and bring forth my instrument saying, "Hey, demure, I present myself as the executor of the instrument because, your driver's license is a thing. You are in charge of it." Okay, and so is your trust. So is the identity that the corporate state deals with, because things can't operate or deal with men and women. They have to deal with things. Okay, you can't put a corporation in jail. So a corporation can't bring a cause against a man. It has to bring a cause against another piece of paper. So they create pieces of paper to deal with you. Okay, your driver's license, your birth certificates, but.
That's why they treat us like a corporation.
Yes.
And put our names in all caps.
Yes, because the government is a corporation. It's not a government of men, and it's not a flesh and blood entity.
Of
so
course.
A corporation can't sue a man because you have to have equitability. What goes for the plaintiff must go for the defendant. So they have to create this corporate this fiction, this corporate fiction to deal with you. And you are officially, you're the creditor and the beneficiary of this. It's made, the instrument is made with the credit that you are given at birth by your jubilee. It's mentioned in the Bible. Everybody has a jubilee, a share of the earth. And they use your share and leverage it with a bond. And that instrument that they create is the corporate fiction. And then the states take those corporate fictions and run with them and use your jubilee wealth, and they run their systems of government. But they want you to believe that you're the thing, that you are a thing.
Right. I'm not a thing. I'm a live human being created by God. I object to them treating me like a dead corporation.
Well, you're actually technically considered dead beyond the sea is the term. That's the term. Dead beyond the
dead beyond the Vatican Sea, anyway.
The term "dead beyond the sea" implies that that term was used whenever people left England and went to the New World, and a lot of them were running away from crimes, or they had a claim against them. They would say that the individual is dead beyond the sea. And the interesting thing about dead beyond the sea, there used to be no statute of limitations for dead beyond the sea claims. But 7 years before the United States declared bankruptcy and they formed the United Nations, Britain changed its laws to give dead beyond the sea claims a 7-year term, and it just happened to coincide with the reformation of the world and when they all declared bankruptcy, and all the dead beyond the sea claims were resolved in the world bankruptcy, and the United Nations was created. I mean, these are all contemplative things. They don't sit around and just go, "Oh, let's try this today." These are very planned out things. I mean,
right.
So people were declared dead beyond the sea a long time ago, during the Civil War.
But let's get back.
Yeah.
In 1791, we had the first central bank of the United States,
Right.
which created a commerce thing going on,
Right.
and a place for the money to be deposited and taken out in the U.S. of A that existed in the original 13, 14, 15 states. And that had a 20-year charter, correct?
I believe it did. I'm not the international banker expert. That would be my friend Bill. But there are still gold bullion banks that still have.
But they expired. That first central bank in the United States
They had
expired
several banks, yes.
20 years after 1791, which brings us up to, 1811. Right about the time there was a lot of push and shove, or should we renew it or not? And I think it was President Madison said, I'm not going to renew that charter because he knew the Rothschilds were behind it and they were expanding and contracting credit to steal properties.
Right, and the interesting thing about that is...
which is what they're doing today.
Right. Well, I mean, it's all about banking. It's all about the platforms of banking and utilizing people as commerce, merchandising men. It's simple as, I make a lot of biblical references because this is a Christian, well, started as a Christian nation, and Christianity is a fairly well-known metaphor. If I was in another country, I'd use another religion, but they're merchandising men. That's what they do. They're using us as merchandise for chattel is what. But I think I understand that we've had about 8 bankruptcies in the history of the United States. But the significance of what you're bringing up is that's about the time. Not only did we have issues with the bank, but we started having issues with crimes against the United States, sedition. They were having a lot of sedition within the United States, and they actually had sedition laws that they had enacted in the early 1800s, and it came to a head in 1809, 1810. And if you read the Annals of Congress, which is where you go to research the first 13th Amendment, they talk about they start having a lot of issues with sedition and start proposing acts to deal with sedition. They start having hearings concerning preventing foreign vessels from entering the ports of the United States. Then they have a very long and lengthy hearing in both the House and Senate in the term from 1809 to 1810, talking about the behavior of the abuses of privileges and immunities of foreign ministers, and the behavior of particularly the British minister, who apparently behaved so offensively. They had hearings that take up over 30 pages in the Annals of Congress, specifically just speaking about this man. And because of that, they proposed an amendment, and they have a special committee, and the committee suggests that they propose an amendment to that, and reaffirming some of the statements that are already made in the Constitution with receiving emoluments and stuff that from foreign nations. But the first proposal for that amendment read very similar to the wording of the finalized 13th Amendment. It said that if any citizen of the United States shall accept any title of nobility from any king, prince, or foreign state, such citizen shall be henceforth incapable of holding any office. Do you mean to be calling me?
Yeah, I want you to switch. We're going to switch laptops here because I think we'll get a better clarity. Can you switch? There you go.
Are you there?
I am.
There's...
Yeah, there. And you look much more clear. I just have to move something. I'm sorry. This was a technical problem, people.
I wanted to make sure that
you look better and you're clearer.
Okay.
We're switching to a better... okay, I've got to put you in the right, position. I need more of that.
All right, there we go.
I think
Is that better?
Yeah, on the camera view that we're getting here, you're looking much better. We just got
I'll take what I can. Thank you, William.
Well, it's the clarity and the quality of the laptop we're using here. But I want my viewers to have the best I can give them, because these people could be watching any overpaid corporate media right now, and they choose to tune in to get some real stuff.
But, I'm glad to hear that.
So we need to adjust that camera on her a little bit. So where we're at here is the original 13th Amendment, which I don't think there's a school child anywhere in any public or private school that has ever heard of what I call the original 13th Amendment.
No, I doubt that. Not unless their parents are historians or something. Maybe
yeah,
that'd be about it.
yeah, their parents would have to be really highly educated historians
Right.
with a pendant. Yeah, we need to adjust till we get her.
Yes, and you also need to have something to look at the documents with.
Yeah, we're not going to get the documents up. I really don't think we will.
Well, the documents will be available online, at my Dropbox if they want to email me at that. Then I can definitely provide it for them. And they're available. I'll even put in there where they can get them on
Are we getting?
out of course.
There you go. There we go. Zoom
So-
in on a little bit.
All right.
Zoom in on her a little bit. Right there. A little bit. A little more. There we go. That's better. That's better. Okay. We're getting a better image of you. Now you got more color, and you're looking much better. It's not you. It's our equipment we're playing with.
So what we have is, you talk about the.
So this original 13th Amendment.
Yeah, it came about because at the time there were British subjects operating within the United States of American government. I mean, they held positions, and they were finding that these subjects were committing acts of sedition and treason. I mean, there were actually people that were charged with sedition, and they were having issues. So it was culminated around the 1809, 1810 when this bank was starting to be, of course, banking is always an issue. And so they basically proposed the original language of the 13th Amendment. And, as I was reading, I can read it again if you like, but it says, if any citizen of the United States shall accept any title of nobility from any king, prince, or foreign state, such citizen shall be henceforth incapable of holding any office of honor or profit under the United States. Now, it changed.
That's pretty short.
Yeah, it was short. It was short, but
That's a really short amendment.
Right, but what they were trying to do is address people who were naturalized citizens of the United States, not nationals, and even some of them were nationals, but they were having people who were not honoring their oaths to the United States of America first, and some of them were actually spies and traitors and were being sent by the Rothschild banking industry to undermine the instruments of government, and they knew that this was happening. They were very aware of this. People were actually tried for it.
So we had the war of 1812.
Right, but before that.
But the schools don't tell us the whole story, do they, about the War of 1812?
Because the reason the War of 1812 was done is because of the 13th Amendment, and that's what precipitated the War of 1812. So then in May of 1810, the House of Representatives passed the titles of nobility of the original 13th Amendment, and they passed it 87 yeses, 3 no. So you would have trouble getting that type of approval nowadays on anything. So 87 to 3, and the House of Representatives amended the amendment to say such. It says, if any citizen of the United States shall accept, claim, retain, or receive or retain any title of nobility or honor, or shall, without the consent of Congress, accept or retain any present, pension, office, or emolument of any kind whatever from any person, king, prince, or foreign power, such person shall cease to be a citizen of the United States and shall be incapable of holding any office of trust or profit under them or either of them. So they made it even more specific. Basically, if you do anything and take any favor from a foreign power, you are not a citizen of the United States. You may never hold. You can't be a president. You can't be a senator. You can't be a House of Representatives. You can't be a judge. You can't be a governor. You can't be anything like that.
You can't be a city councilman. You can't be a mayor.
You could be a sheriff. You could be anything. You're basically, if you operate against the United States or operate in favor of another one, you're not a citizen of this nation anymore. So they really started parsing the line between Britain and the United States, the mother country at the time. And we were still doing trade with them, and we were banking with them. I mean, so it's.
Is this crazy or what?
Well, I think people were surprised that people would be doing things against the United States of America, this wonderful land of freedom. But there was subversion. I mean, these were intentional acts. I mean, it was spies. I mean, there was, they were being sent over intentionally to undermine us.
So Benedict Arnold wasn't the first, and he wasn't the last.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, if you look at the case files of the Sedition Acts, there's lots of people that were charged with sedition. I mean, there were acts of treason a lot. And the problem at the time is that people didn't know who the masters were. They could find the actual final acts, but they couldn't find the masters. And so it was passed in the House of Representatives on May 1st, 1810. These are all facts that are actually within the record. And then on April 27th, the Senate passed it to a vote of 19 yeses and 5 noes. So that's pretty good.
And that's in 1810.
Right. Now,
we're talking over 200 years ago. The first, what we call the first original 13th Amendment was passed and ratified by the states. I think Virginia was the last one in January or March of 1819 to ratify it.
And what happened? So we have that history, and that's there, right?
And then it's published again and again and again up to the Civil War.
Right.
And
in
then
multiple state constitutions, even in the Ohio Constitution. I mean, we can find it in a variety of constitutions, a variety of school primers. And what you find now, so, back to when I started doing research on this, they're like, oh, it didn't pass because Virginia didn't ratify it. So I find this book because I just want to learn the Constitution, and I find this great book called the annotated. It's called the Constitution of the United States Annotated, and it's there's only 2,000 in existence. It was printed by the Order of Senate Concurrent Resolution number 35, adopted in 1936, and it's called the document is actually number 232. Like the book itself is considered a document in the Senate of the 74th Congress. And it brings forth the United States Constitution with all the cases that were brought before the Supreme Courts and the annotations of those cases up until 1936. And in the annotation of the 13th Amendment, they mention the first titles of nobility 13th Amendment and the second 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment that we're aware of is the third 13th Amendment. There's actually 2 before that. And so it speaks to the first 13th Amendment, which is what we're talking about here. But the first 13th Amendment, it says that it was not passed because it was failed to be adopted, being ratified by 12 of 18 states. Now, the term 12 of 18 is interesting because there weren't 18 states in the Union at the time. There were only 17. And so that in itself is a misstatement of fact in a Senate document, of the American, produced in 1936.
In 1936, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was president, and I think he was on his third term, wasn't he? Second or third term, and he was in with the banker good old boys.
Oh, he was totally a banker president. They loved him. Yeah,
they
did.
The banks loved FDR, and this was not well talked about, but something else happened right about that time. And I think to get our history right, we'd be amiss to skip it.
I think the Federal Reserve Act was initiated somewhere around in there.
No, there was something else that happened. There was a collusion to overthrow even FDR and a general, a United States Marine general, who had named General Smedley Butler.
Yes, Butler went before the Senate and gave testimony.
He gave testimony. Right. Wasn't that 1936?
It was around that time, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
I can pull it up. I have it on YouTube.
And he exposed
and
yes, I do.
He said, look, these banker guys want me to overthrow the president, overthrow Congress, and take over as dictator. Right. Then the banks could deal with just one dictator. And what was going on at that same time in Germany? The banks had set up Adolf Hitler as one dictator.
That's right.
So they were setting this world up for one dictator in Germany with another dictator in America.
Really important part about the Hitler comment is that at the time, Germany was the prevailing democracy in the world. It had the highest per capita economy. It had the most freedoms, and it was at the pinnacle of its democracy, you should say. So, and they brought in.
Yeah, I think that's true. Right up to where Hitler takes over, and then it took him about 3 or 4 years.
The false flag, the Night of Long Knives, yes.
Yeah.
History repeats itself.
But I think we'd be amiss to point out that what happened in Germany almost happened in America.
Well, actually, it is pretty much there.
Well, with General Butler, I mean, though, General Butler, because people won't know, the people alive watching the show today weren't even born in 1936. So
Right.
they have
Right. Right.
no concept of who General Butler was. He was a twice decorated
An
for
amazing,
valor, Purple Heart type stuff,
an American
U.S.
patriot.
Marine general, and he was offered the dictatorship by the banks. I'm not going to go into specifically which banker and all that because that's a whole nother show.
Whole other show.
That's a whole nother 90 minutes,
Yes,
people.
it is.
But stick with us, even though some of this may seem obtuse to you right now. Stick with us because we're getting to some really valid and important stuff that will change your view. So don't tune out. Stick with us. General Smedley Butler went along with them to see how far they would take him, and then he pulled back, made a film, went to the Senate, exposed it, and our great president, FDR, who took us off the gold standard and then said now it's illegal for Americans to own gold. Turn in your gold, and then he devalued it 40% overnight, and that's another
Yeah.
whole story.
Right.
And then slowly they started the process. See, it wasn't FDR who was really in power. They wanted the cripple in that presidency. And if you read the Constitution, the president cannot be a cripple. The president has to be physically fit, mentally fit.
Right.
That's written into the Constitution. But the people in 1932, 36, right up to the time he died in what, 1945?
Right.
They never
Well, but
saw
they-
him in his wheelchair. They
Right,
never
they
saw
never
him.
knew he was a cripple. I mean, the press wasn't what it is today. There wasn't, they were just pictures. They didn't see them unless they saw them. You have to understand the limited press that was, and they could easily hide a cripple.
Yeah,
in the
there was
press
no
at the time.
television.
Yeah,
They did
exactly.
have radio in the big cities,
Right.
but there was no television.
Right.
And the still photographers were told in advance, you will not
Never
take
allowed.
pictures of FDR in his wheelchair.
Right, right.
You will not
But they-
show him
but it's
being helped up to the podium to stand on crutches.
But I think it's an important point to be made that the bankers approached the military to try to overthrow the United States and to insert a dictatorship, because I think that, we're pretty close to that now, I mean, in a lot of ways. So I think it's, you definitely need to study history in order to understand what's going on now. If you're a studier of history, what is happening now in the world has been done, I don't know, I can think of at least 3 times before
Yeah,
in different countries, easy.
It's been done
You know,
over
so-
and over, and it's always the bankers, the international bankers,
Yeah.
that want one strong dictator that they can put in and replace at will. And that's the key to understanding what's going on in the world and in the United States. They want a strong dictator.
Right.
So
They
this
wanted to-
titles, this what Lotus Justice here is talking about, the Titles of Nobility Act basically says all these bar-carded people, I call them, you would
Right.
call them attorneys, and Lotus Justice would tell you, an attorney means what, Lotus?
One who twists. Yeah, a
One
torner.
who twists.
One who twists. Yeah. To attorn means to twist. So an attorney at law is one who twists at law. Their job is to twist the law, that by their etymology. And then if you look up an attorney in a law dictionary, an attorney is one who transfers property from the vassal to the lord. So their job is to twist the law and to take your property and give it to their master. I mean, that's their job. That's by definition. That's not me making that stuff up. People just don't understand. And attorneys twist words. That's their job. When the natives said those white men speak in forked tongues, they were talking about the attorneys who came and made the treaties and then turned around and put them, in camp.
In camps, right.
So, because that's what the treaty said, although that's not what they read it to mean. So they're very. You have to understand the language of law in order to understand what they're actually saying to you. And a lot of people, don't understand that language of law, and they know that there's something hidden in that contract, which is not lawful, by the way. And to have an ambiguous term in law or an ambiguous, term in the contract is not lawful either. But people understand. I mean, everyone doesn't trust attorneys. They know that they don't tell you what they're really talking about, So that's their job. So
They're
if you're really
word
good
masters.
at twisting the words, be an attorney, I guess.
Twisting the words, that's what
Well,
all
not
it's
only
all
that,
about.
Right, they twist. So, but the other thing, so the first thing you could find find out about the 13th Amendment is that there is a Senate document that was produced by the Secretary of State that has a lie in it. There were not 18 states that voted on the 13th Amendment titles of nobility. There's only 17.
There's only 17. Which means they only needed how many to ratify?
Well,
Three-fourths.
three-quarters, 13, I think like that, something like that, 13. It says, and when it says that it wasn't passed lawfully, they cite two citations. The American State Papers Miscellaneous, pages 177 to 479, and the Documented History of the Constitution, 454 to 499. So I went and I found the books. I found the books and I bought them, okay? And I bought them off the internet from people selling law books, you know. And I went and looked at them, and the first thing I find out is that the American State Papers basically are the documents of the legislative and executive of the Congress of the United States, and they're Gales and Seton. And I say these citations in case people want to try to go find them or look them, but I have copies of them. I put them up there. And it was under the authority of Congress. And in the miscellaneous book, I think it's a 3-volume set, the miscellaneous, which is always where you want to look for stuff like this, is the miscellaneous and the supplements. In volume 2, it is in that there is a communication to the House of Representatives from the Department of State on February 6th, 1818. And the Secretary of State at the time is John Quincy Adams, and the President is James Monroe. And it's in response, the House of Representatives on December 31st, 1817, after the resolution of the War of 1812 and everything got back to business, House said, hey, didn't we pass a Titles of Nobility Amendment? And so they go and ask the Secretary of State, and he sends back this letter to them and to the president, and he says that these are the individuals who have voted yea and voted nay, and point 17, which is the 17th state, Virginia has not answered the request as to whether they passed the titles of nobility. So at the time, I think they had 12 of 17, with one of them not having answered. And a friend of mine would tell you that the War of 1812 was there to obscure that fact. So then they also talk about in this annotated history of the Constitution, the documented history of the Constitution. So I got that. And that is a very interesting book of state, because it talks about that was actually published by House Resolution 7. And the joint resolution says that originated in House of Representatives to amend the Constitution, and that there was a First Amendment, and that it was, again, it has the roll call from John Quincy Adams, and again, Virginia's just missing. You know, they don't really know what Virginia said. It's like it's not a state or something. And in truth, Virginia isn't really a state. Technically, it's still a province of Britain. But that's a different story. Maybe that's why they felt they could leave it out of history. But so it's the same thing as reaffirmed, that Virginia has never answered. So I said, well, we need to find out about Virginia. So the rumor that
Lotus?
there was...
Excuse me, Lotus? Can you call me back? We're breaking up. The image is breaking up here.
Okay.
So this is a manatee being released after it's healed down by this power plant. There they come. The manatee's on that blue stretcher. They saved the manatee that would have otherwise died from too many wounds. Yeah, this is in Florida. This is just this month of February, back around February 10th, I believe, 9th or 10th. And you'll see them walking in. And we're going to call Lotus back here. I just wanted to share this. It's so beautiful. They saved this beautiful animal called a manatee. It's sort of like an elephant, but he swims, spends his life. He's a mammal, he's an air breather, but he spends his life in the water. And those waters actually help keep him alive from the power plant. Otherwise, when it gets too cold, these creatures die. And the food they feed on dies off. Okay, let's see if we can get Lotus back up here. Just wanted to share that with you people. We're going to get back to Lotus here. We're ringing her right now. Okay, we're going to ring her again. She's probably calling us. Manatees love this river because of the power plant. Because in the Gulf right now it's about 58 degrees, and they don't thrive well under 68 degrees. So 58 is about 10 degrees too cold.
From my end, that there is that we're having difficulty with the connection. I think like I said, I think there might be some interference going on. If you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I do indeed.
Well, we can still continue with audio because this is where it's getting good, which wouldn't surprise me if we were getting a bit of interference. So let me get back to it's saying that we're having connection problems. I think that there might be some IP address interference there from people. So, and I'm not trying to be paranoid or anything, but it does happen a lot.
It happens.
So, yeah, it does happen. So
I mean, they went to they went to the extreme to put you in jail just to shut you up for a year.
Yeah, I know.
That's that's not paranoia.
No, it's not. And they actually, like I said, I told you before that they actually broke my ribs. But the individuals who broke my ribs, it's what it is. It's the strange thing is that people don't even understand the roles that they play in these seditious and treasonous, plans. It's so fragmented. The role that everyone plays is so stratified, and no one does any one whole thing. It's much like the way people say that keeping the fact that aliens exist away from us by the mystic program being fractionalized, that no one really understands the roles that they play and in the preventing of the truth coming forward. And that's the way our government is now designed intentionally, that people then go do their thing for their paycheck, but that action is very pivotal in preventing the truth from being exposed to the public, and it's designed to be that way. So, they put me in prison for a year and kind of beat me up to try to keep
Was it the bailiffs? Was it the bailiffs in the courtroom that broke your ribs?
Actually, no. What happened in the courtroom is I had informed them. I went with my instruments and demurred, which is basically where you challenge the jurisdiction of the court, and it's a lawful standing. It's a lawful plea. It's in the statutes.
I know.
Ohio.
I was taught about demurs when I went to law school.
So I demurred to have them prove the jurisdiction, and they refused to answer the questions. And the judge, and so she issued a warrant for my arrest while I'm standing there for failure to appear. Literally, a warrant was issued for failure to appear while I'm standing right there talking to her. And so I'm like, well, forget it. I start to leave. I know. Yeah, I was arrested for failure to appear in the court. So
while you're there looking at her.
because
so who broke your ribs?
The instrument.
Who broke your
right,
ribs?
Looking at, right. So it's a very interesting video to watch, that's for sure. And I'm challenging, all the instruments, and I'm professing to be the executor, not just the beneficiary, and that really challenges them. And I start to leave, and the officer, who I knew, I had been, like I said, I'd been occupying, helping in the courts with people exercising their constitutional rights for about 2 years, and he knew me, and he says, Lotus, and he knows me as Lotus. He says, Lotus, please don't go. And so I don't go, and he starts to arrest me, and I do my little start to grab my belt, resisting, and we're sitting there playing, hand tug of war, and an attorney literally jumps on my back. Literally, a visiting attorney who works as a prosecuting attorney for another city, who comes to the city of Columbus courts, jumps on my back and throws me and the officer to the ground.
Oh, my
God. I'm smashed between the officer and him, and I'm thrown into the church pews that are in our temple courts. And when they do that, my ribs are broken 3 ribs are broken from compression, meaning I was smashed so hard between this 250-pound 6'5" guy and me and this officer that my ribs were snapped outward from him slamming me to the ground with the officer. And so the officer gets a little literally like a scratch. It's like literally a scratch on his little teeny tiny scratch on his head, and I get a felonious assault of an officer from him throwing me into the officer. And I get 3 broken ribs and a year in prison. And I wasn't charged with resisting arrest, by the way, because they knew that they couldn't do that. So
was this caught on camera?
Yeah, there's several videos of it, which they refused to surrender. I have videos of it. I have 2 videos of it that I have had since provided to me. I was not even allowed to bring the videos to trial. That they refused to allow. I wasn't allowed to present any evidence in trial, none whatsoever. They arrested one of my 3 witnesses. They literally arrested him off the stand while he was giving testimony, which is against the law.
Why did they arrest
Yeah.
him? I mean, I know it's a dumb reason, but tell me why anyhow.
Well, they said they needed a Social Security number. See, I actually know the law, and I know administrative rules, and I know rules of evidence.
Only
And I
the
never asked
Social
for discovery.
Security Department is allowed to demand your Social Security number, and an employer.
I'm quite aware of the. We are all very quite aware of how unlawful that action was. It's actually a federal felony. What they did. The judge committed a federal felony, and in arresting several, actually, not to mention treason, since it's on the record and two people colluded. But that's a different story. You know, they kind of do what they want. But he arrested one of my witnesses who refused to provide his Social Security number. And the only reason they needed to provide the Social Security, they said, well, we need the Social Security number so we can check to see if he's committed perjury anywhere. No, they wanted the Social Security number so they could then bond the action even more with most Social Security numbers. So we have every belief that they took the four witnesses' Social Security numbers and created more bonds with them in the case. But they arrested him on the stand because he refused. And he even cited the federal statute. You can't demand that of me. It's not relative to the case. And he still arrested him until he surrendered. The judge literally held him in contempt until he surrendered. Now, this was after the judge had agreed that I won a motion of evidence, and that I did not even have to provide a list of witnesses to the prosecution because I never asked for discovery. It's a rule of evidence, and I won the motion, and then he proceeded to collude on the record with the prosecuting attorney to threaten, duress, and coerce through threats of arrest the Social Security numbers out of every witness that I bring forth. And I wasn't allowed to bring the
Why do you
videos
think they
forth.
wanted that? Do you think they were going to go do something with their bonds?
Yeah, that's what they did. That's the only reason we can figure. It had nothing to do. He could have ran a background check with their driver's license or their birth certificate and an address. You don't need a Social Security number to run a 50-state background check that checks for perjury. You don't need it. Okay? And the feds were even notified of the action. They did nothing. Again, there's collusion in all, areas of the government. The feds should have been in there when a, quote, judge, an administrator in a hearing is arresting people off while they're giving testimony. You're exempt from arrest while you're giving testimony. That's a felony.
So
You
do you think the judge is going to ever be arrested for a felony or having him arrested?
I don't know. I would be hopeful that he is.
Was that Judge
because
was that Judge Peoples or Judge?
No, that was actually Judge McIntosh. He is a deacon of a church too. Great, upstanding citizen.
Judge McIntosh is a deacon of a church?
Yes.
And he's committing felonies by having witnesses arrested? What church is he? What church is that? Church of Satan?
Well, what God do you follow? In God we trust. You should probably ask what God, people forget to ask really important questions like that. So, it was and actually I could provide, when I was in prison, they refused to give me a bond, and so I had to write my brief by hand, which is fine. That's true common law. So I wrote a 161-page brief where I basically meticulously exposed every federal and state crime that they committed in constitutional tort and trespass. It was 161 pages, and they said it was too long, and they wanted me to rewrite it, or they weren't going to accept it. They actually struck it off the record completely. They didn't keep even the evidentiary facts. They kept nothing. They struck the whole thing.
Who? Lotus? Who? Which judge? Which judge struck it?
The appellate court. The appellate court for the county did.
For which county?
They acted as though, the 10th appellate court for Franklin County. Yeah.
10th, which is a 3-judge panel, right?
Yep.
Do you remember the names of these scumbags? Appellate judges.
I don't even. I could put the case up there. I could put all these. I'm a meticulous secretary because I was taught that the best secretary wins at everything. And what I basically do is I go out there and I challenge these people, and I bring forth the law, and I write lawful writ, and I keep proper administrative order, and I create a public record of sedition, treason, and acts against the law and dishonors of the law. It's all there. It's there for everybody to see. That's why when I put writs on the record, they often leave a lot of stuff out. because it's so damning. Because these attorneys, they don't bring forth the law. They're there for lucre. They're there for personal interest. They're not going to challenge an unlawful judge,
No.
because then they won't make a living anymore with this judge, and that's all they care about.
Exactly. They won't make a
and-
living.
Yeah,
Exactly.
all they care about is making a living. They don't care. I mean, that's why they joined the union. And there's a lot of attorneys that are actually wantonly, willfully committing acts of federal felonies with racketeering. I mean, there's so much racketeering and corruption and racketeering happening in the courts, quote unquote, courts of this nation. Human trafficking, corruption, and racketeering is pathetic. But that's a side note, because the reason why they're allowed that's the point of the 13th Amendment, is that the people who are within the instruments of state, the seats of state, knew that attorneys and esquires were not honorable men. On the whole, they are technically, by Aristotle's standards, sophists. They twist the law for profit. That's what they do.
They're
not philosophers. They are sophists, and they attorn for money. And their first duty is to the court, the forum, the bank.
You're so right. You are so correct. I watched a case here. You don't know it. It's the People versus Carrari, and I keep asking, what people? Only the sheriff seem to care. I don't see the whole city coming down there. This thing, the People versus, there aren't the whole city bringing these criminal actions. But anyway, in the Carrari case, the guy had a gun that was made to shoot shotgun, and it's legal in Ohio and 45 other states or more. But it happens to be illegal in California. I think it's the only state. And the prosecutor kept referring to it as a shot-off shotgun. It wasn't a sawed-off shotgun. It was a short pistol designed, and I watched this prosecutor, I can't remember his Oriental name, and he kept repeating shotgun, and I kept saying, your own photograph shows it's not a shot-off shotgun.
He misrepresents the facts.
And I bet
the other attorney never even objected to him doing that.
He didn't, and that made me really upset.
He's not gonna, because that's their code of honor, is they protect each other in their lies, their torment, and their bad faith in the law. And
which is why
I'm not saying all attorneys are bad, but on the whole, the practice of an attorney, because we've discussed this, an attorney and a lawyer are two different things. A lawyer is a person with a PhD in jurisprudence. That's a philosophy degree. Someone who understands the philosophy of law, okay? Because if you read case law, you understand that these case laws, they are philosophical arguments. They are matters of debate before 12 men. That's what the law is. An attorney has a master's in business administration. They have a business degree. They do not have a jurisprudence degree. They do not know jurisprudence. They don't study the philosophy and the history of the evolutions of law in our society and world. They know nothing about constitutional law. They're not taught it. I think that it's considered an elective if they want to know about it. They're taught banking.
They're taught the UCC, Unified Commercial Code.
Right. So the fact that every attorney out there with their license to practice law, which isn't a license at all, there is no such thing as a license to practice law. In fact, if you read the national, the bar, the code of ethics for the bar, they say that they are not state licensed. They are not regulated by the state. The state can't regulate the process of law. That is case law. The state cannot say you can practice law and you may not. Everyone is equal, and everyone has the right to counsel of their choice, be it an attorney, a priest, their dad, a friend. Okay,
that's in the Fifth Amendment, isn't it? That's part of the Fifth Amendment.
But they try to tell you that a counselor is an attorney. No, a counselor is anybody that you contract to help you relate. They're called relators, to relate your case to the law. Everyone has the right to bring forth law. It is not something that can be regulated by the state, but they would like you to believe that the Union of Bar Attorneys. Now, the fact of the matter is, since they're in a private union, And they say, well, you can't operate in our private union. This is our private forum. It's a private jurisdiction. All the courts in the United States are private forums in a private extra-constitutional jurisdiction. They're not operating in the Constitution. They have, after the Civil War, they created their special courts to affect bankruptcy in the Bankruptcy Act of 1879, where they affect the bankruptcy through what's called forced bankruptcies, where their private army police powers go and drag you in and force you to settle a bankruptcy. Okay, it's not what people think it is. So, and that is why the 13th Amendment is so critical, the first 13th Amendment, because
The original
it's the original one. The original 13th Amendment speaks to the fact that these people are not citizens of this nation because they operate in that fashion. They've been operating in that fashion for hundreds of years.
Ipso facto, these bar-carded people in black robes that used to be members of the bar cannot sit as judges because they've already lost their citizenship.
Right. They
And
are
yet,
not anybody.
there's Judge
A
Peoples.
doctor isn't either. I mean,
There's Judge Peoples and Judge, what was it, the other judge that put you in prison? What was his name?
Judge McIntosh. Yeah.
McIntosh.
Mr.
These
McIntosh,
guys
yeah. I
don't
call him
even have
Mr.
a,
He's not a judge. I don't consider him a judge.
well, these imposters
He
sit there.
He threatened to put me in jail for contempt if I didn't call him a judge and her a judge.
Well, that's interesting.
That's against the law too. That's against the law too. You can't. There was a judge who. It's an amazing case to read because the prosecution actually subpoenaed this judge to testify, and she admitted on the stand that she issued a warrant without following the standard administrative rules of the court. And he kept trying to make me call her a judge and threaten me with arrest if I didn't do it. And when you're on the bench, you have no protections of office. She isn't a judge. He isn't an officer. He's not a detective. When you are a witness in a case, you lose all the protections of an office. So if you're a detective, you're not a detective on the bench. You're a man. You're not an officer, a peace officer, quote unquote, on the stand. You're a man. You're not a judge on the stand. You're a man. And you cannot force people to call them officer or judge. That's against the law because it's prejudicial for the jury to give this person a title. I mean, he wouldn't let me call the other guy a judge. In fact, I was going to call a common law judge. They refused to let me call him. I couldn't call the guy. So there's all these.
I see where you're going. So actually, all these judges could be arrested for pretending to be judges when they're not Article 3 judges. They're just a man in a black robe.
They're administrators. They're administrators in a bankruptcy hearing. I mean, it's what they are. But the fact of the matter is, I think we've talked about this, what makes someone a lawful judge versus an unlawful judge, because pursuant to the law, if courts of law are missing, okay, then whatever court is there is obligated to try to effect remedy and relief. So meaning if we only have these extra constitutional courts there, those people who are putting themselves out there as the authority in law are obligated by the law, the real law, to try to actually give remedy and relief to the people. But they're not doing that.
No, they're not.
But there are some attorneys who are operating as quote judges that are administrators of bankruptcy that are actually affecting. So not every attorney is breaking the law. Now they're still not citizens. Okay, but they are affecting they are affecting the vacancy of our government because during the Civil War, what happened is the Republic government of the United States was made vacant, and it's never been filled. So all the seats of government now have corporations sitting in them instead of men. So
and corporations are dead entities.
I understand that. And so all the actions are what we call in rem actions, actions in things. So that's why they had to create a thing. They had to make you a thing so that they could affect some form of law. So they're bad, but they're not really bad, because if we didn't have them, we'd probably have, just crazy chaos and the criminal element going crazy like Mad Max. So I don't have malice for these people, but what I do have, when I do get upset with them, is when I bring the law and then they break my ribs and put me in prison instead of affecting, what should happen. The law is very clear on what should happen. So now that these things are being brought forth, let's move forward in the law and restore the law and restore the republic and get de jure government and de jure courts, and let's not have chaos in the streets, because they're getting crazy. The people are starting to understand that the government isn't doing things for their own benefit, for them, that they're operating in racketeering and corruption. You have child trafficking, human trafficking. You have bankruptcies that are ridiculous. You have banking fraud galore. You have people bringing down buildings and killing thousands of people in false flag operations to create reasons to go to war so they can invade other countries for their raw materials. I mean, it's chaos now. Okay,
Yeah,
it's organized
I agree.
chaos.
We're dealing with organized chaos and organized war by banker
And organized
criminals
crime. You're dealing in
Organized-
organized crime.
at the highest
your
levels.
government
Yep.
Your government is operating in some forms as a mafia. They're not following the law.
I agree.
And the problem is,
I agree.
And the problem is, the problem is the reason for that is no one knows the law.
I agree with that too. Most people,
They don't know
including
the law.
myself, do
And
not
then
know
people-
all the law.
And then when people come forth and say, hey, just so you know, it seems like you're not doing things the way you should, instead of listening to them and having a reasonable, logical discussion and say, hey, can we come to some agreement and evolve the processes here and evolve the machine of state into a lawful thing instead of dabbling into fascism and utter chaos and world war? Instead of them going, hey, let's be rational, they instead want to target people, say that they're enemies of the state, say that they're belligerents,
They're
put
terrorists.
them in prison,
They're domestic
assassinate
terrorists.
them.
They were
I'm sorry?
calling the Bundy defenders in April of
Terrorists,
2014 domestic terrorists. They weren't domestic terrorists. They were rescuing cattle from the government cattle rustlers. That's what they were doing.
And you got to remember, cattle are titled instruments. I mean, that's like, imagine if you had 40,000 cars and the government came in and took them all and tried to sell them out from under you. How would people feel about that? You know what I mean? But they steal titled instruments all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
They steal children. They're titled. They steal people and put them in prison all the time.
They do. We both know that.
Police technically kidnap people every day,
So-
even pursuant to the law, and they don't, understand that. But the problem with lawlessness is it cycles down to chaos.
Right, and I
Whenever
think
your
that's
state-
intentional. I think this is intentional. They're not doing this by accident. The government we have is a government of criminals, but we're down to only 10 minutes left. We've been on the air for 80 minutes. We're down to the last 10 minutes.
Well,
Time
I think
goes.
what we should do,
So
if you have
give
a
me
chance,
give me the
go ahead.
pages you would like people to look at here. Give me the pages
Yes.
of the documents. The writ of
Well,
conspiracy.
What I want them to look at, here's a significant document. The most significant document is the laws of Virginia. Because the laws of Virginia were created, and they were issued by the state of Virginia. They were published in 1819. And the first one is the supplement to the Revised Code of Laws of Virginia, which has the Organized Acts of the Convention, and it has the Constitution of the United States in it. And in that,
Which
they
page?
show I'm sorry?
Which page is it on?
I believe is on page 30.
30,
Page 30.
okay, page
and,
30.
And if
Laws
it's
of
on page
Virginia.
30. It shows the 13th Amendment in there. Then, if I don't have the supplement up, I will get it up. Then the important aspect is the supplement for the Revised Code for the Laws of Virginia, where on page 51, there's a very important act. Now, mind you, the Laws of Virginia I have are Masonic sealed. These are Masonic sealed instruments, okay? that show that on page 51, it's called on chapter 42, provision 2, it states that the republication of the said 4 volumes, the certificate of any 2 members of the executive council that they have compared the same of the originals or with a copy as corrected by the certificates of the examiners heretofore appointed shall be deemed equal in validity as comparisons altogether with the original. So basically, the 2 sets of books I have, which there's only like 450 in circulation ever, are considered equitable to the original documents of the House of the Congress of Virginia that passed the 13th Amendment. And what they did is they're using Matthew 18:15 through 16 that says you bring 2 witnesses. So the first publication in 1819 was the first witness of the 13th Amendment. The second publication in the supplement in 1823 is the second witness, showing that they passed the 13th Amendment. And the writ of conspiracy brings all these instruments forward, showing that Virginia did pass. Because the War of 1812, what did they do? They went around to all of the colonies, all of the original 13 the states at the time, and they burned all their courthouses. You know why they burned the courthouses? To get rid of proof of the passage of the 13th Amendment. You go ask any small town about where their courthouse happened in 1812, and historically, they were burned. The British and the seditious people went around the United States in the War of 1812, and they burned all the records.
Well, they tried.
Virginia,
they didn't get them all,
right?
but they tried real
No,
hard.
they didn't get them all. They tried. I have some. There's some people that have others, but there's multiple copies that are secured. You know, and you were talking about me coming out there bringing documents. Oh, heck no. These are documents of state that must be preserved and protected, and they are preserved and protected, and they will be here for the people, and I will put them up. But I assure you that the Titles of Nobility, 13th Amendment, was lawfully ratified in 1809. It was reaffirmed in 1819 with the laws of Virginia, and 1823 by second witness. And I'm going to tell you, if Virginia would just show that they did it and bring it up on the record, it would be a lawfully ratified amendment.
If you want to see these
It already
people,
is by the law.
look on the screen. There's her email, lotusjustice@gmx.com. If you email her, she will send you the link to these documents.
For Dropbox.
We're not talking Looney Tooney here. We're talking real, original 200-year-old documents that have survived 2 centuries of intentional with malice cover-up by what I would call the agents of the bark-hearted criminals. And I would even suggest that one of your big heroes of libraries, Andrew Carnegie, may have had a hand in this, because
well, and there's a lot of patriots. And again, I want to say this because this is important. Most of the people who operate in our government, because my mother's a civil servant of over 30 years, they want to do the right thing. They have been lied to. These attorneys, these judges, these policemen, these military men, they have been lied to. You have to give them the grace of knowing that. And it's difficult for them to understand that they've been lied to for 200 years and that we are operating under a foreign jurisdiction, a military overlay that most people don't understand. And the thing is if we did understand it, I think that our system of government would already be better, and we need to move forward. We need to restore the rule of law.
I agree.
We need to do it for our children.
I agree.
We have to do it for everybody because, you know, now we have military bases in 197 nations. Those military men don't understand that they're not taking orders from the American people.
No,
they're not.
They're taking orders from bankers.
From bankers.
Exactly.
They're taking orders from the rich elite who are there for their own personal benefit and don't care if they kill 83,000 people in one day by bringing down buildings just so that they can go to war. They don't care.
We're down to 5 minutes. Lotus, we're down to 5 minutes. I want to suggest some things. How to remedy. We've talked about the original first 13th Amendment. We didn't even get to the second 13th Amendment.
No, that's even more fun.
And we're going to have to do that on another show because we're going to be out of time. So I just want to hit some solutions. If we the people, were to form our own court and say we are forming our own de jure court, you can bring your case here without an attorney. We will elect.
Those are the common law grand juries, and there are processes for bringing those about lawfully. And there are people who are experts in that have been trying to do that. The people from the fourth branch that I spoke to, Bill Elwood, he is a common law. He is a lawfully appointed from a lawfully organized grand jury. He is a lawfully appointed common law judge, and he has the knowledge to bring this forth. We've been trying to work on this for years. It's something that we can tell people how to do. We have the law books, we have the history, we have the case law to get it done. That's what needs to happen in places like Oregon. People engaging their sheriffs, who are the highest, the shires of the region, which are the highest constitutional authority. They are the keepers of the counties and of the land. You need to make sure that they are following the law. And if you have unlawful sheriffs, get them out.
Well, that
If
sheriff,
the sheriffs
you mentioned, the sheriff
was
of
appointed.
Harney, he was
Yeah.
appointed. Who?
Right, and that's not. Then he's not a lawfully elected sheriff. The people need to make sure that they hold their sheriffs to the Constitution, and that if they have appointed sheriffs that are not operating the law, then they probably need to give me an email, and we need to move things forward. But there is law there. There is a system of law that was designed over 200
And
time ago.
we need people
Yes.
to learn the common law.
Right.
Is it
right.
a,
and it's
is
there.
it is it
it's
a true
there.
is it a true
I'm sorry?
fact that on one hand you have the common law which upholds we the people for the common man, and opposing it is the statutory law created by the attorneys twisting the law? Is that a true statement?
Well, the statutes are, it's close. The common law is there for the people. That the people are the fourth branch of government. Justice Scalia said that. The great man, he was a common law judge. A lot of people don't like him. He affirmed
Oh, I
that
like
the
him.
people have a lot of people don't, but the people have the unbridled right to bring forth the law. They are the fourth branch of government. It's not spoken, it's understood in the Constitution. The people are the superior lawmakers of this land and of this country. The
Right.
Constitution gives them that right.
504
And the people need to bring that back.
504 U.S. 36 is the citation, where
Okay.
he wrote
Yep.
in 1992 in the case of U.S. versus Williams.
Right.
He wrote very clearly in a 6-3 decision, we the people are a fourth branch, and when we form our grand jury, not by a judge's appointment as they currently do
Nope.
now, not by the legislative branch and not by the executive, but we the people. And this is why I think it's a tragedy Scalia was killed or died or whatever
Right.
way he died.
Well, I think
We
it's
don't
highly
know
likely
yet.
he was murdered, yeah.
It
Very-
appears he
he
was
was-
murdered because just like in the JFK assassination, Texas has the law, if you don't die in a hospital, there
Well,
must
we'll have
be
to- you know what?
there must be an autopsy. And JFK
Right.
was
Well-
never given an autopsy. They spirited
Right.
him out of Texas, and we never got the truth till 50
Well,
years later.
I wouldn't want to hang out in Texas too much personally myself for that very reason. But we'll have to get together again. We'll have to do this more, and I could bring some people to the table that could teach people how to do these grand juries in the common law. This is something that's not going to go away. There's a lot of people who love this country. My family's been here since the 1600s. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving this country. I'm not going to go away. I'm going to be here until my country is restored and the law is restored.
You're not going to join the 1 million Americans that have already left and abandoned America
No,
and
sir.
gone
No,
to
sir.
Brazil and other places?
My family helped found this country, and I'm going to make sure it becomes what it was meant to be.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm here for. And I'm not here to destroy this nation at all. I'm not here to destroy the government. I'm here to make the government lawful and make this the most. To me, the United States of America is the promised land. America is the promised land that they speak of. For me. Because it's the only place where all 13 tribes live, and we all live in harmony. And we live in harmony, and they have to make us fight each other. They have to be divisive and feed us lies and propagandize us and do very ugly things to us to make us hate each other. This is the best country in the world. The land is special. It is given the grant of God, in my opinion. So I'm not leaving the promised land.
Okay,
I'm going to
I
make
got
this
that.
country what
We're
it was
gonna have
meant to be.
We're gonna have to do this again, Lotus. I'm sorry you can't see me, and I can't see you.
I think there's been some divisive intervention in that. So next
Yeah.
time we'll have to prepare. But thank you for having me on. It's always wonderful talking to you, William, and we can definitely do this again. And call me and my people anytime, and we are more than willing to share our knowledge with the people, so that we can get this country and this world back
Should
into the law.
we the people outside the government form committees of safety in each city and county?
I would suggest that it's always about local rule. That's what
So we
the
should.
Constitution.
Should start forming our committees of safety.
I think getting to know your neighbor and being your neighbor's keeper, being your brother's keeper is what people need to start doing. You need to start keeping your communities, having concern for your communities, and holding your elected officials accountable to the law, regardless of what happens.
Well, thank you.
I think that is an American construct, and that I think we're the best in the world at that. And I think that when people start doing that things will improve. We can make this place a wonderful world. It doesn't take that much, William. It really doesn't. Just get rid of the really, 1% bad people, and we'll be fine.
Thank you, people, for being with us. I'm William Wagner, your host. I appreciate you being with us, and I hope you've learned something. And you go email Lotus Justice if you're paying attention. Sorry if you missed it, but we're out of time, and you'll have to tune in and watch the replay of this show. This will repeat in about a month in late March. Thanks for being with us.
Applaus für die Mädels und für den Burschen.
Been here since the 1600s. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving this country. I'm not going to go away. I'm going to be here until my country is restored and the laws restored.
You're not going to join the 1 million Americans that have already left and abandoned America?
No, sir.
gone
No,
to
sir.
Brazil and other places?
My family helped found this country, and I'm going to make sure it becomes what it was meant to be.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm here for. And I'm not here to destroy this nation at all. I'm not here to destroy the government. I'm here to make the government lawful and make this the most. To me, the United States of America is the promised land. America is the promised land that they speak of. For me. Because it's the only place where all 13 tribes live, and we all live in harmony. And we live in harmony, and they have to make us fight each other. They have to be divisive and feed us lies and propagandize us and do very ugly things to us to make us hate each other. This is the best country in the world. The land is special. It is given the grant of God, in my opinion. So I'm not leaving the promised land.
Okay,
I'm going to
I
make
got
this
that.
country what
We're
it was
gonna have
meant to be.
We're gonna have to do this again, Lotus. I'm sorry you can't see me, and I can't see you.
I think there's been some divisive intervention in that. So
Yeah.
next time we'll have to prepare. But thank you for having me on. It's always wonderful talking to you, William, and we can definitely do this again. And call me and my people anytime, and we are more than willing to share our knowledge with the people so that we can get this country and this world back into the law.
Should we the people outside the government form committees of safety in each city and county?
I would suggest that it's always about local rule. That's what
So we
the
should.
Constitution.
We the people should start forming our committees of safety.
I think getting to know your neighbor and being your neighbor's keeper, being your brother's keeper is what people need to start doing. You need to start keeping your communities, having concern for your communities, and holding your elected officials accountable to the law, regardless of what happens.
Well, thank you.
I think that is an American construct, and that I think we're the best in the world at that. And I think that when people start doing that things will improve. We can make this place a wonderful world. It doesn't take that much, William. It really doesn't. Just get rid of the really, 1% bad people, and we'll be fine.
Thank you, people, for being with us. I'm William Wagner, your host. I appreciate you being with us, and I hope you've learned something. And you go email Lotus Justice if you're paying attention. Sorry if you missed it, but we're out of time, and you'll have to tune in and watch the replay of this show. This will repeat in about a month in late March. Thanks for being with us.